This is Above Grade with J.S. Brown and your host, Bryce Jacob.
Welcome to Above Grade, where each week we discuss the construction landscape right here in Central Ohio. I'm Bryce Jacob with J.S. Brown and Company. I'm here for your edutaining and educating value. And so is Ben.
Hi, I'm here. That's my hand right there that you saw. Yes.
That's all we get to see of him,
Yes.
which is a good thing.
It
So he's
is.
a little camera shy guy anyway.
Face for radio, as they say.
So, Ben, I got to ask you,
Yes.
Now we've been rolling with the show, and we've been doing this on YouTube, which has really been very exciting and new for us. We get to see some of the things that we're talking about, and that's the luxury of tuning in. What have you been getting from it? Last week we had the people with Bathworks in here. We looked at that gorgeous showroom and saw all the stuff. Has this inspired you much?
It actually really has. Like, I actually started talking to my wife a little bit because, we live in a home that was built in the 80s, and it's kind of getting to the point where it's like there's some things that definitely need to be updated, and it's one, like, in my head, I'm always like, well, I'll do it myself. And
I don't know
and then I get into, like, how much work that is, and I'm like, I'm not doing this. This is too much work, and I need somebody who actually knows what they're doing.
Now, I understand you do a fair amount.
I do
on your own
construction. I wouldn't call it like home remodeling construction. I build shelves and sets and things like that.
I'm going to make an offer to you.
Okay.
I think next week for the show, I want to have you talk about what you do as DIY.
And throw myself under the bus?
Yeah,
yes, I'm happy to.
I always like to do that. If
I'm very
you
good
listen
at it.
long enough, I like to throw people under the bus. And then we can talk about just do-it-yourself projects in general and some of the risks associated with it, but also some of the great benefits that come out of doing a do-it-yourself project, and maybe some of the reward you've had from it as well.
Yeah.
But one of the things that happens with construction that is inevitable. If you're going to work in an existing home, then you're going to actually have to do some demolition.
Mm-hmm.
And so today it kind of leads me to this guest that we have. I've got Chad White. He's with Recyclean, and it's a wonderful company that actually doesn't just do demolition, they do deconstruction. So there's salvaging of those materials. So I've got Chad with us this morning. So Chad, it's great to have you with us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. You and I have been talking for almost a year now just about what you do, and I've wanted to have you on as a guest. You're a hard guy to get on the show, but I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you. We certainly played tag trying to make this happen, so
yeah.
I'm glad I could be here.
Now, when I first met you, you kind of you struck a chord with me, because obviously what we do in construction is a lot of removing of, in some cases, perfectly good pieces of a home. They've been there for a while. It just doesn't work for a homeowner, but cabinetry and walls and just construction debris. And when you approached me about this, I thought, okay, well, he just tears things down, but there's more to it, what you guys do.
Absolutely. As it sounds, deconstruction is the opposite of construct. So we carefully come in and we remove the portions of the property, whether it be a home or a commercial building, that are no longer wanted. And for many of these products, they're in good condition and can find another use, another life, whether it be a reuse or onto recycling.
Repurpose it.
Yeah, repurpose or at the very worst, recycle the material.
Yeah.
The big thing is that we're trying to divert the material from going to the landfill.
Gotcha. My wife calls me demo man at home. It's the one thing I'm good at. The rest of the stuff I don't do good finish work.
Taking stuff.
You're in good company.
Yeah. Well, it's therapeutic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Look at you. You're a picture of health. You obviously are doing a lot of demo. And, so do I. I like to tear things apart. But most of what I tear apart, I'm just not as careful with. So it's not good for reuse. But I'm going to pay better attention to that and start deconstructing some things with your guidance.
Sure. It is a knack. Obviously, our guys are very skilled in what they do. And they do it very efficiently. Part of it is training, but a lot of it is experience on the job, obviously. So that's not something that I could honestly go in and do myself very proficiently.
Yeah, you got professionals that do it.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, how do you get into something like this? Is there really a market for it? Like, people will pay more for you to deconstruct something than just take a bulldozer to it?
There truly are. There's people that are very conscious about the environment.
Good. I applaud them.
Absolutely.
That's smart.
And we see that more and more. And I see it on the new build too. I'll have people approach me and say, what happens to the material that's left over from the new build, which the answer to that typically is it goes to the landfill.
Yeah.
So it does strike a chord, as you mentioned earlier, with many people. The really great thing about what we do is we can actually take it a step further, and there's an actual tax benefit that does help pay for the actual demolition of this. So it's kind of twofold. You're doing something great for the environment, sending this material on for another use, avoiding it from entering to the landfill, and then at the end of it, hopefully you're getting the demo side of it of your project paid for in the long run with taxes.
Now, I did a little research because I always do this with every guest because I try to know enough to not sound too naive, but I like the story of your founder. It's a good story on your website, and he sounds like a kind of guy I might have some fun with.
He is very down to earth. Mike started the company about 15 years ago, and it is 100% passion driven. The man is all about making sure that these materials don't go to the landfill, and he's to the point where if he finds out a vendor of ours that we're sending material to be recycled isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing or promised what they said they were going to do, that he'll have a
calls
fit.
them out on it.
He calls them out on it, and he'll find another vendor to send the material to. So
really?
he is that passionate about making sure that these materials go on to another life.
Well, I like how he said he started as a dumpster diver, as a kid. That's what boy, before these devices came out, you actually used to go outside and dig around in trash. That's not so bad. I had all my tetanus shots and all that. I'm assuming he did too. But that was really great. He and a friend would go around and just find stuff and salvage it and repurpose it. And that started at a young age. It's always fascinating to me how people's stories develop, where their passions start at a very young age, and especially in this gentleman's case, to where it is today, where he's got a business and pursuing every way to keep everything out of a landfill humanly possible, which I think is admirable.
Absolutely. Yeah, he like I mentioned to you before we started, he actually takes it beyond just the diversion side of it. He'll bring product in, and on the weekends he'll take steel material that's left over or pulled from jobs, and he'll build dumpsters, roll-offs for our company to use on the next project. So
from the steel?
Yeah, absolutely. So he truly utilizes everything that he possibly can if he can't find a home for it or if he has a certain niche for that product. So truly remarkable individual, somebody that when you meet him and you hear the mantra of the company, what they do, the benefit of it, the effects not only to the homeowner, the property owner, but also the environment, it's hard not to get behind and believe in it. And it's truly a wonderful process, and it really goes a long way in leaving a better place for my kids and your kids. So.
Yeah, speaking of a place for kids, this is really interesting. I don't know if you guys know of this, and this is a curveball for you because it doesn't have to do with you guys necessarily, or it might. But in St. Louis, there's a museum. It's called the City Museum. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not. You'll
have to Google it, and everybody out there, Google this thing and check it out. And if you're going to St. Louis, make time for it. I mean, this is one of the most phenomenal things. I was in St. Louis for a business trip, and I had a day to kill. And that doesn't normally happen on a business trip, but there was just this gap, and I had a whole day where I needed something to do. And I said, what do you do in St. Louis besides, go up in the arch, ride that thing? And they said, do you like museums? And I say, I like museums, but, I don't know that I'd want to spend my day at a museum necessarily on a free day. And they said, well, do you like to play and explore? And I said, yeah, now we're talking. And they said, go to the City Museum. And I said, well, what is it? And they said, the City Museum is it's 10 stories of architecturally salvaged material from buildings. Oh, wow. There's old fire trucks. There's old school bus on the roof that is hanging over the top 10th story of the corner of the roof, and you can climb in the emergency exit and go sit up in the driver's seat and look over the edge of the building.
Oh, wow.
And there's 2 Lear jets that have been hollowed out, and they're suspended by rebarb, and you climb up rebarb tunnels into the cockpit of this stripped out jet and off the wing. It's all through rebar, so it's safe.
Sure.
You're not going to go falling anywhere. And you go down a slide into the back of a fire truck. There's construction cranes that are enclosed that you can climb out on the boom of these things. It's just phenomenal. And then you go inside, and they used old conveyor belt, the rollers for slides for kids. And it's an adult playground, and it's all architecturally salvaged material right down to the walls. The bathroom walls are the old, the lunch lady has the silver the stainless steel bins that the beans and corn and all that stuff are in. They fastened all of these salvaged things together to create a curved wall. It's a work of art.
Yeah.
And like it'd be something, right? You guys need to take a field trip.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Sounds
where
cool.
your next company meeting needs to be.
Yeah.
Where it's off site and write it off.
That's,
yeah.
And that's too bad we didn't know about it. We recently did a project in St. Louis, so we certainly could have. And maybe Mike was there. I never asked.
Yeah.
He may have.
Yeah.
He may have visited.
It's extraordinary. I wish I would have had pictures prepared. I just
Sure.
thought of it while we were talking about it. It's right up his alley because it was right up mine. And I've sent so many people there just off of the excitement of what I experienced. I can tell everybody had the same initial reaction of, okay, well, maybe we'll check it out. And then they come back and they're like, I can't believe how amazing that was. It's just incredible. And there's a old arcade inside called Beatnik Bob's, and you can play old arcade games from the 50s.
Oh, wow.
Just by going in there, and you can buy a adult soda pop and walk through this place, and it's extraordinary. I mean, they've salvaged everything you can imagine. Amazing playground. I wish
Sounds
every
like my cup of
every
tea.
city
Yeah,
should
that's
have
great.
one.
Yeah.
Every city should have one realistically, because there's so much growth. And Columbus is a great example of it, and Chicago, close to where you guys are established, have all these old buildings that are being taken down to make room for new. And it always crushes me because I go, oh, what are they doing with all that? It'd be nice to see it show up in an area where we could go enjoy it, appreciate it, bring our families, and have a little bit of history recaptured.
Well, I think it opens people's minds to the reuse aspect of what the potential, what the opportunities are, and there's no doubt is the further we go along, the more opportunities and the bigger ideas and the more ideas that we didn't think about stem from what we do. It's really extraordinary.
Yeah, take a trip down there. Get Mike down there, take a look at it, and hopefully do one of those in Chicago, because there's enough space and there's enough draw to keep that business going. And if you need an investor, Ben would be happy to.
We'll talk later.
I got millions, so I'm in.
It's from all those DIY projects
Oh
you
yeah,
do. Save all that money.
Don't spend money on it.
That's right. Do it yourself. That's right. That's awesome. All right, so I want to take folks through some of the projects you've done. Like, what are we talking about here? And so you provided some images that I thought it might be nice for you to walk through what it is you do. And I've got some myself that I'm gonna throw at you to show some things we've done. But here's a kitchen. This is what we run into. We come into a home, we see a kitchen like this. It needs to be updated, or someone wants to make a change. But there's a lot of good material there. So what do you see when you walk in like this?
Absolutely. And you'll see this is a good scenario of somebody that purchases a home and it's not quite the kitchen that they want.
Right.
To the majority of people.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, they probably look at this kitchen and say, wow, there's great appliances and there's a lot of updates already done in here that most people would probably be happy with. But people come in, they buy a new home, it's not what they want, they're spending the money, so let's go a little bit further. So we'll come in, they'll engage us, and we carefully remove these materials that are in here. So we'll remove the cabinetry, the countertops, maybe take it down to the studs, get into electrical work, things of that nature. So we can get clear down to the mechanical and projects like this if we need to.
Yeah.
But those materials come out, and then what we do is we facilitate these materials moving on to either recycling or onto a nonprofit, a charitable organization.
Yeah.
So
what
that's
we're looking at, just real quick, I'm going to pause you for a second. So for those of you listening to the podcast that don't have the luxury of seeing this on YouTube, you can either go and check this out because you might want to see it. But there's it's a kitchen that has a beautiful copper hood.
Absolutely.
A really neat copper hood. You have a lot of fun with that thing. There's some neat wood beams on the ceiling, and some people go into a home and they say, I don't want wood beams. Other people say, I want to add wood beams. So it can be used for the right person.
Absolutely.
One man's junk's another man's treasure. Right. And you've got a brick wall there. Countertops, stone countertops. I can't tell you how many times we go into a kitchen like this where you go, wow, that's beautiful quartz. Yeah. And the client goes, I want it dark. And it's like, well, it's white. It's good quartz. Nothing wrong with it. Yeah, right. I'm going to go with a dark one. And you go, oh, shoot. What do you do with all this? So,
well, and typically it snowballs from there. So,
yeah, you're right.
Well, while we're doing the counter, let's go ahead and do the cabinets. While we're doing the cabinets, I know the appliances are only 3 years old, but let's go ahead and replace those. So you look at a kitchen like this, and more than likely those are probably Viking or a higher end
sure.
appliance.
Beautiful range.
So that moves on to somebody else that you can truly utilize those. But I think the mentality when you get into some of these projects is let's just do it all while we're doing it.
Yeah, and there you go. It's torn out, and
Absolutely.
you can see that the brick was more of a facade. So it was a brick veneer that was applied to the wall, and some of that could be salvaged. I mean, how much of what you take out becomes waste?
Obviously, it depends on what the material is.
Sure.
The older buildings, typically, if brick is involved, we can utilize more because the older brick has more appeal. Typically doesn't have the whole structure.
Right.
It's a solid brick.
Yeah, it's not
so
cord.
it can typically be salvaged easier. So depending on what the material is, the goal is every project, whether it be an interior job or a complete tear down, is that we are able to salvage or recycle at least 70% of that project.
That's amazing.
Some of these projects, again, depending on material, we can get to the 90 mark.
Holy
so
smokes.
that when we start hitting 90, then we're all extremely happy at what we do.
I would think so. I'm surprised to hear that you can even get to 90. With what you tear out, what gets damaged in the process of demolition.
Absolutely.
When you look at some of these things, you have to be meticulous, and that's where I'm curious. I'm going, how do you make money doing this?
Well, there's certainly a cost aspect to it because
Yeah.
there is a time constraint involved.
I was going to say,
yeah,
time
it takes
seems like
time.
the enemy
It does
in this
take
case.
longer.
Yeah.
Well, sure.
And typically, what we see, this kitchen is a great example. A demo is a demo, and our guys are so proficient in what they can do that they can do this project usually as quick as a straight demo crew. And when you're done, the job site is cleaner, so you have less damage to walls, less things for the fit crew to come in and fix.
So this isn't
essentially.
like swinging a sledge. It's
Exactly.
more like surgically removing
Right.
things,
And-
meticulous.
Yep, and these guys are so good. They can typically do it in a similar time frame. It's
Wow.
when you're doing a complete tear down. Let's say you wanted to put a new house up where an
Right.
old structure was. That's where you
That'll
run.
take more time.
Absolutely, because you're talking excavator 1 man versus a 6 or 8 man crew over a couple or
Sure.
a few weeks time. So.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So they take the dust and do something with that, huh? That's good. That's a selling point right there to a homeowner. They don't like dust.
No, get rid of it.
Get rid of it. That's the 10%, right?
Yeah, right.
There's dust, my friend. Yeah, that's cool. And then you have these old hardwood floors. So I'm curious, as you salvage this, I would imagine you build quite an inventory of product, and you have to find a buyer. My mother always used to say, because I'd say, "Oh, this is worth so much," and she said, "It's only worth what someone will pay you for it." She was always Debbie Downer with that. Sorry, Mom, you were. And she'd always say, things are only worth what someone will pay. And so, there is a market though for salvaged material.
Absolutely.
So do you go into it saying, "Oh man, finally, we've got such demand for this that this is going to move really quickly"? And what are those things?
For certain materials, absolutely. And that's the beauty of Mike doing this for the past 15 years. He has a lot of these relationships already established and in place to offload these materials. Obviously, hardwoods, flooring, stuff like that are pretty easy to get rid of. But there's a lot of materials that most people wouldn't think are, number one, have a value to it, and number two, have a reuse for it. But there's some guys in Wisconsin, for example, that actually have built their business model of new homes or new structures out of old growth lumber.
Yeah.
So the closer to 1900 or before that
Right.
material is, they want it, and they sell that to their customer as obviously a better
It's a differentiator.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
it's a better grain. A lot of times it's more dimensional. It's a true 2x4. So they've kind of built their business model around these materials. So obviously that's a source to get rid of lumber packages and things of that nature. Brick is another great example. We have a gentleman that works with us that primarily brokers brick for us. So we get into these big projects in Milwaukee or Chicago, St. Louis, all over the Midwest, and it has a substantial
Big
quantity
demand,
of brick. We'll go ahead and have that sold off site, and it'll directly go onto rail cars. So all that'll be facilitated and never hit a warehouse or anywhere else.
Awesome.
That typically goes to Florida, Arizona for landscape reasons, putting down as pavers, things of that nature. So.
Yeah.
How
but
do you
that-
get the mortar out of the bricks? I know that seems like a stupid question, maybe, but I mean,
Well, if the folks can see me,
nail
it's,
file.
no, it's truly a crew that has a pick hammer, and as long as one side of that is clean, they can reuse it in
lifts
another
off,
application.
Yeah,
So-
man.
But there again, that's one of the limiting factors of the brick is how well the mortar
Yeah.
comes off and
Yeah.
the reusability factor
Wow.
of it. So, yeah, it's all labor intensive. It's one
I
by
would
one.
think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
So these guys have to be strong and have pretty calloused hands, I would
Absolutely,
think by now.
yeah. It's not an easy project by no means. These guys know how to put in a day's work.
All right, let's take a look at something else. So here, tell us what's going on with this it looks like just a typical 2-story house.
Yeah, there again, it's not a bad home. It's not in disrepair. People are actually living in it at this point. They sold the home. The new owners wanted the lot, not necessarily the home, just based on location. So they engaged us to come in and remove the home. And here we're looking at a photo of what's left over. So this is
kind of tore it down to the foundation.
Yeah, it is. It's everything down to the foundation. So you've got block walls, you've got a concrete basement, and that material is left there. Obviously, the excavator comes in, and we still try and salvage as much as we can.
Yeah.
We send that off to a recycler to crush that and reuse the limestone. So we try not to let anything go to waste.
Yeah, that sounds like it. And I see the old stone around the fireplace as it stands alone in the middle of the home, and you've got some block walls or brick walls, I guess they would be, that are still standing, and the old slabs. So that's fascinating. So are you working with somebody that's designing a solution for the new home that's going in here, or do you just come in and say, whatever they're going to do, that's cool, we're just taking this stuff and we're out of their hair?
It really depends on what level of engagement we've been brought in. So whatever the GC needs us for, the homeowner, we work.
Do you have architectural services?
We don't.
Okay.
No, we do not.
Okay.
No.
So, well, that's great that you're getting. I mean, that's a clean site right there. It looks like they got a pool pump in the backyard.
Yes,
and right now it looks like they got a pool in the basement too.
It's pretty common.
pretty common when
especially,
it rains in the Midwest.
Yeah, especially this time of year.
That's exactly right. All right, so those are a couple residential. Now you also get into commercial work as well, and I would imagine that might be a bulk of what you do, isn't it?
We do a fair amount of that, depending on the time of year.
You're probably getting the cool material out of commercial, the old steel and
a lot of it.
Yeah, old windows, the old steel framed windows. You salvage all that stuff.
Absolutely,
man, that's so cool.
Yeah, and
I got to visit your warehouse
anytime. We'll be happy to show you around.
Just need a flight up to Chicago, don't I?
That's not a bad drive.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah, so one of the projects actually that we're finishing, actually I received pictures this morning before I left, and it's actually down to the ground. So what we're looking at here is actually in process, but we're removing the rafters out of the old Fox Theater in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So I don't know how far back you remember, but the Fox Theaters they were around the Midwest, around the country.
Certainly.
So this is one of the last ones. This particular building was in disrepair. So the city deemed that obviously it's inhabitable and it needs to come down. So because of the age of it, the historical side of it, the citizens of Stevens Point were I shouldn't say up in arms, but very concerned with taking down this building, losing the historical value of it. It has obviously had meaning to parents and grandparents and different people. So the general contractor that was brought into this happened to engage us on this project. And what we find is when we're engaged, that kind of lessens the blow to the community. Okay, we can't salvage this building, but know that we're going to save every possible thing that we can out of this building. And this is a good example of, like you said, the steel rafters and doors, and obviously the theater seating. It's still in
steel
condition.
Trusses that we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those are steel versus a wood frame.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah,
and
so
you have
those
a
are
crane. You're dropping them down gently.
Yep.
What will you do with that?
So it'll go on and be used in maybe in addition to a building. It really has so many different.
It just has to match the span and the pitch and all those things. You're not going to modify it.
Typically not.
Yeah.
And we run into different structures and different projects. For example, we just moved a building, tore it down, and moved it actually from Wisconsin into Michigan. Person purchased that. Square footage wise, it was a heck of a deal to have. Building and have all the skin and everything to it. So they resurrected it. They poured their concrete foundation and walls and resurrected this steel building back up on it. So, what would typically go to the landfill now is pennies on the dollar per se for a new owner, essentially. And it's a great building.
So when you're brought in, I'm just kind of curious, and if I'm asking too deep a questions that you don't feel like answering, then we'll just act like they're static or something, and we'll lose this part of the show. But, so obviously you get paid to come in and do the deconstruction, but then is the material yours to sell?
It is not.
Okay.
So as I started to explain earlier, what we help facilitate is, one, a donation to a nonprofit, the charitable organization. So all the materials that are taken out of this project particular is gathered up, readied for transportation, and then we transport it to wherever it's at, whether it's the new home or to the charitable organization's warehouse, whatever the scenario is. The second thing that we do is we engage an independent appraiser for the homeowner, or several, depending on what their comfort level is.
Right.
What this appraiser does is they come in and they actually put a value on the materials that we're extracting from the project. So that is what the homeowner will be provided, an IRS Form 8283 that they can take to their tax advisor and reduce their taxable income. So that's where the tax savings comes in to play of all this. And,
Understand.
And the really, truly, until you get into it, the astounding thing is how much these materials truly have value.
For, yeah.
Well,
I mean, we're looking at this, and there's a theater full of old seats.
Absolutely.
And I've gone into enough homes here in Columbus where someone has a pair of theater seats just sitting in their hallway as a decorative element, but a couple seats.
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat because you walk in and you're like, oh, cool, that's from a theater.
Absolutely.
And it fits the style of the home, and they go in basements if you're watching movies. There's all kinds of things you can use this for. But, kind of looking at that, a lot of people would look and say, oh, it's too bad. I bet that had a lot of life in it. Still got a lot of life left.
Yeah.
So, that's exciting. Let's see another one here. Yeah, there you go. You're a little bit further into it. That looks like the theater as well.
Right.
So what's going on at this stage?
So at this point, obviously the skin has been pulled off the walls and the ceilings and everything. So you're left with the wood structure underneath.
The framing, yeah.
Absolutely. So here you're looking at the upper level. It's hard to kind of
the mezzanine?
Explain, and yeah exactly. But so at this point, we're starting to take the walls down. We're starting to take the ceiling off.
Yeah.
And then that material, like I said, is brought together and sent off. So at this point, you've got the majority of the interior work is done. Now you're getting into the structural portion of it.
Makes me think of like an underwater picture of the Titanic right here.
Right.
Where it's all
kind of the skeleton.
Dilapidating. It's all coming apart, but you're meticulously doing that. That's pretty fascinating.
No, was this theater derelict for a while, or how long was it empty?
Honestly, I don't know, but it was long enough that it was
in bad shape.
It was in the complete disrepair.
Wow.
So there was no salvage in it, according to the city and everybody, the inspectors, everybody that came in and gave their expert opinions on it. They said there was no way to save this. It had to
that's
come
too
down.
bad. Yeah.
That's a real shame.
Yeah. Neat historical element. Yeah. And where are we here? It's gone.
Yeah. Obviously, we have cleanup to do there, but this is about a week, maybe 10 days ago. So we're, like I said, the new pictures today were of snow and a clean site. So is
this the back of the building, or is this the?
This is where the building sat. So this would have been the front of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Looks like a war zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does. Well, but you have all that brick and everything that you need, that you can
Absolutely.
do something with. So it's spectacular because we see this. I can't tell you how many times I've driven from Toledo. I've driven through downtown Toledo, and you see a building that's just been taken out, and there's an empty lot there. And you go, well, what happened to the structure?
Right.
Where did all the parts and pieces go? And I would assume you probably didn't get your hands on that material.
Probably
there's
not.
enough of it that gets away. That probably drives you guys bonkers.
It does, and it's tough to sit back and see that happen. And you drive by it every day. You can't do it all. You can't capture it all. You can't get every job, but you have to celebrate the small wins and say, okay, we did get this today, and we're going to get this one tomorrow, and we're going to do the right thing on these going forward. So.
Well, I think you have to be prepared to grow, because Above Grade, the podcast here, has helped businesses grow tremendously because of the worldwide exposure we have. So get ready for your phones to ring.
We love it.
If you've got a building to be salvaged, these guys are
we're ready.
Guys. Yeah. It's that time that everybody loves. It is time for the tip of the week. So here is your tip of the week. Natural resources are being consumed at such a rapid rate that many items are becoming scarce to produce, which drives the price up. Before simply demolishing what's old, consider deconstructing it to preserve irreplaceable resources and put them to use again. Remember, one man's junk is another man's treasure. Yeah, it's one of these things where I got a bad rap as a kid because I collected everything. It started as bottle caps. I was like, I can find a use for bottle caps. Every time I drink a Pepsi or whatever it was, I'd save the cap, and I made cool stuff with it. At least I thought so. And I've kind of been that way. So that's why I'd love to meet this Mike, because we probably have some similarities along
definitely.
there. But and I've done some of these things. I've done some projects, and so one that we worked on. This is kind of an interesting one. This is an old house in Upper Arlington. It's one of the first 5 homes in Upper Arlington.
Oh, wow, good.
And we had this on a tour of remodeled homes. We actually had people come through while it was under construction, and it was in this state, and they could see what you go through. We've really never done that before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a couple years ago. And what you're looking at is there's an image on the left, which is the old fireplace that sat in the family room, and it was a massive structure. And it was on slab, and it was enclosed in the house. And the new design called for that whole room to be destroyed, demolished. And we said, well, gosh, we don't want to build a new fireplace. There's nothing wrong. It's perfect, and it's massive. Mm-hmm. And so we said, let's tear it down. So what you see there with the fireplace, it's freestanding right now. There's no structure around it.
Right.
It's just kind of sitting there. We had to build back around it. And then the other image that you see is an area where the master bathroom was going, and the floor system was so cobbled up from the old plumbing and everything that we literally took the floor system out between the 2 floors, the first and second floor, and had to rebuild it in there and reroute plumbing and get HVAC in there. And there's a steel beam in there. And, when a homeowner comes home to their house and, we're working on it, and they walk in and they go, oh no, and you're past the point of
right.
just putting a halt on it and saying, no, let's keep it the way it was. Too late. So, this is the kind of stuff we run into, but we had the ability in the next image here to take that fireplace,
wow.
and it's the same fireplace, and how we finished it to look like it fits the space that's new. And as we built in and around it, it was a good example of that brick that you see there. There's actually even an inset hand-hewn beam here that was overlaid that we pulled out and took the old brick and toothed it in because they didn't want that hand-hewn piece. When we pulled it out, we found that the original homeowner that built this home, the father had put that beam in, and we got it to that family to have back in the family to put
That's
on
remarkable.
display.
That's
instead of, because I wasn't letting it go anywhere.
Right.
Because
No,
I have
great.
so much old barnwood. You should see my office. I'm the one that has like clips of old barnwood. I'm not throwing that out. I'll find a use for that. Look, a doorstop. And, so that was a good example of how we can make something that was really old and make it look new again. And so this is what the back of that home looked like. Down on the bottom left was the before. And so that left side of the home that I'm pointing at there was pulled off. That fireplace stayed, and a new room was built on, and then the floor was all leveled, because you can see that from this level to this, there's a big step down.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And this is ultimately where the kitchen ended up going. So there's a sunroom they got torn off, or a little glass, not sunroom, but a atrium was taken off, and everything was just kind of rebuilt in here. So the new kitchen is behind these windows, all the floors align, and you saw how beautiful that fireplace was. So very, very involved type of work, and remodeling is very similar to what you guys do, in that we're preserving the old home. We aren't just wiping these things out and building a new home. And it is more expensive, than tearing a house down in some cases, especially when you get into a major project like this. It would have edged on, do we just tear this thing down and build a new one? But everyone in Arlington would have been up in arms, because it's one of the original historic homes, and they probably would not have any friends in the neighborhood and have to lock themselves behind the doors of their new home. But instead, they get a lot of recognition for preserving the home and reinvesting in their home, making it fit today's expectations.
That is a beefy fireplace too. That is
an
incredible fireplace.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah. That would have been a lot of material to get rid of. Yeah.
It would have. And, when we looked at the mass of it, we went, well, shoot, we can take everything down around it. It's still going to stand. It probably would have held the house up. The darn thing is so big. So, yeah, it was a massive thingy. And then here's an example of just, salvaging old barn beams and everything. So this is my basement. And so I did all this work. And I actually carried these beams out of fields. And they come from a variety of barns that were being demolished that I went, no, you can't take these. And I've got some really good stories because I got some beams that, I was in a snowstorm and I went out to the barn that was getting ready to be demolished and they weren't salvaging it. I went out with a hacksaw and I cut 2 of these beams, and literally in about 1.5 feet of snow, I carried these things a half mile through this old field to my truck and put them in the back. And I swear, I was thinking, man, if I fall over dead out here, they'll never find me because no one knew I was out there getting that stuff. But here's, these are just old wine crates. These are wine crates that I got from an old store and put those in and made a ceiling finish out of it. That's the kind of stuff that you see the wine crate, you don't see the ceiling until you make it a ceiling. And it just worked so well to finish this out. And in the background, you can't see this old black pipe and old barnwood just made tables out of it. It keeps all my stuff. And I don't care if the kids bonk into it. It's just like it's a piece of barnwood. I'll get more. And, old corrugated steel used as this inset panels. This came from a roof of a barn off of Georgesville Road locally here.
Thing. That's really cool.
It just makes sense, Ben.
I dig that joke. That's a good one.
That's the kind of I've told that one before. You can tell it can't roll off too smooth. But yeah, that was we were trying to keep creative in the pub with what we could do. And we've got inset steel and old reclaimed wood countertops. So we've planed these just slightly, so there's a lot of variation to them. But we brought the wood together and put a countertop in. So it's really just fantastic. And then of course the pennies were just a lot of fun to put in there. The color scheme and just using some material like that was a lot of fun. And I think that cost me. I think it was $7.43 is what it was, somewhere in that ballpark. But there's a handful of pennies there. I was like, wow, my backsplash was $7.43. However, it was 4 beers to install, so
there you go.
It took that amount of time. So
that's a labor cost, I think.
It's a labor cost, labor of love. Yeah, so it's kind of fun that was a DIY project. But I want to talk about some of the partners you have as well before we wrap things up, because a lot of these folks, I pulled this off of your website, these are folks you work with to make sure materials get in the right hands.
Absolutely, and it depends on what part of the country we're working with. Obviously, the national recognized charitable organizations,
Goodwill and Habitat.
Absolutely, we're going to send as much material as we can. When we're working in the Chicago or Milwaukee area, we have one that we pretty well utilize exclusively out of Kenosha, which is community charities. Excuse me, it took me a second there. And the reason we do that is because they pretty well accept everything that we're willing to give to them. They're not selective on what their inventory levels are. They're not looking specifically for cabinetry or countertops, fixtures. They'll pretty well take it all because they have a lot of the outlets to get rid of those materials. So we do send a lot of it there, and if we are in a part of the country that we can only offload a certain amount of material, we'll facilitate the transportation back to Kenosha to get that to that organization. But the goal is when we go into these projects, if we know what the product is coming out, we try and offload it before it has to hit the warehouse floor. Yeah,
it's awesome. Well, it was good. I really appreciate having you come on and finally get this pulled together so we could chat and get to know Recyclean Incorporated a little bit better. And there's your website there for everyone to take a look at. Check out some of those projects because that was fun. I had fun tooling around and reading Mike's story and meeting your team as well. And just kind of seeing what you guys are doing. I'm real excited for you and hope things continue to go well. And hopefully we can get you involved more in this market. I would imagine that's why you're here in Columbus, is to do a little bit more of it, and especially with the amount of growth we have and things that are happening and new projects being announced.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we've been in the Chicagoland, Milwaukee markets for a long time. It makes sense. But I've been in the Columbus area for over 20 years now. This is where I've called home. My family does. So the next step for us to branch out made sense to come to Columbus, Columbus, Ohio, with me being here, and we're excited about it. We do enjoy the projects that we have been on and that we continue to quote out. So we've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline that we're excited about, and hopefully everybody will see a lot more of our signs sitting around, and hopefully we'll be a household name before long.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Well, Chad, appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure, and maybe we'll have you on when we got one of those Columbus projects we can share with our viewers and listeners, and wish you the best.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
That concludes our program for the day. I hope you all enjoyed it. This is Above Grade, the podcast, and also the YouTube show. You can also go to us if you want to shoot us a comment or a question, or you want a topic that you would like for us to cover. You can go to abovegrade@jsbrowncompany.com and shoot us an email, and you can just tell us how well we're doing as well. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But certainly download you can go on iTunes, you can go on jsbrowncompany.com, download our podcast, go to check out the YouTube, like I said. That's pretty wonderful. So this is Bryce Jacob with J.S. Brown & Company and Above Grade, wishing you a great week to build from.